Hello, and welcome to Fresh Blood, a podcast about killing it after 40, where we prove that new blood does not necessarily equal young blood. Here to discuss what it takes to have continued success through life, I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. With over 20 years of executive recruiting experience, I've learned how much we can grow and be inspired by other people's stories. I'm excited to share that with you here on Fresh Blood. Today, we are speaking with Mark Leslie. Mark is the owner of Stark Publishing, a writer and editor, professional speaker, and self-proclaimed book nerd with a passion for craft beer. With more than 25 years experience in publishing and book selling, Mark is an industry expert, having spent time as the director of self-publishing and author release with Kobo, as president of the Canadian Booksellers Association, board member of BookNet Canada, and director of business development for Draft to Digital, among others. Mark has also been a professional speaker and has authored over 25 books himself. I am excited to learn more. Mark, please, could you tell us a little bit more about your journey in the publishing world and starting your own Stark Publishing and hearing a little more about your journey?
Yeah, thanks, Jolie. Mark Leslie, it's funny, is the name I decided to first write under when I first published my first story in 1992, because my actual last name is Lefebvre, and most people can't spell or pronounce it. So what I did is I just chopped off Lefebvre, went with my first name and my middle name, so Mark Leslie. That's where that came from. I do actually have a few books now under Mark Leslie Lefebvre because I'm known in the book industry and the indie author space as a book guy. Yeah, and so I was like, wanted to play upon that. They knew me as Mark Lefebvre. I write under Mark Leslie. What do I do? So I merged those things. The Stark brand, or the company, I registered in 2004. I wanted to self-publish some of my short fiction that had already been published in small press magazines as a guy who writes scary stories and horror and thrillers and science fiction and spec fic and all that stuff. And back in the day, 2004, you didn't want anyone to know you self-published because it was a dirty word. It was considered vanity publishing. I created the company Stark Publishing. My best friend Steve and my name Mark. We had Stark Entertainment when we were in college. We ran a DJ company, and so we always dreamed when we were kids that one day we would have a company called Stark Entertainment, and he was going to animate cartoons and I was going to write screenplays. And what we ended up doing was we did Stark Entertainment as a DJ service, and then later on when I wanted to self-publish, I said, "Hey, can you design me a logo?" Because he's a graphic designer. And do you mind if I use the name Stark Publishing? And so I did it to hide from the fact that I had self-published my first book, which
smart.
It was previously published stories, so they'd already been published, they'd already been edited, they'd already been accepted somewhere. I was just collecting them and saying, now you can read them all in one place, and you can buy it directly from me through online retailers, etc. Because I was using print-on-demand services way before ebooks existed. So that's where Stark came from.
Yeah, it's a nice little hack for the industry back then. And then now it's very mainstream. So have you expanded the Stark Publishing, or is it mainly your books under the Stark Publishing brand?
Yeah, so Stark Publishing is several of my books, but I have actually started to do more collaborative publishing with friends, specifically colleagues who maybe I can teach anyone how to self-publish and how to do it, but sometimes they just don't want to. Because you can keep all the margin for yourself if you did it yourself, and I'll show you how. Mm-hmm. No, I don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it for you, but I'm going to keep a cut. So is the opposite of the way most traditional publishing works. Is most traditional publishing, they keep most of it, and the author gets a really small percentage. Like I get 8% from most of my traditional publishing, whereas when I'm self-publishing, I get to keep 70%.
What a great company model. I just think that's fantastic what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think what I look at it as more of, we're doing this together. And in most of those cases, the author has already done all the hard work. They've already worked with an editor. They've already polished it. Maybe they even have a cover. If not, I do have a cover designer I work with regularly, and Juan does amazing work and he turns it around fast. So I can often, for a relatively inexpensive price, I can get a really decent cover designed if we don't already have one. So I approach that. I don't consider myself a publisher, although it's funny when I look at it, I go, I've already published a book of a friend of mine. He's homeless, living on the streets in London, England.
Oh, wow.
And I said, I can show you how to do this, and then you can earn some money off of these, because he's a brilliant writer, and he just didn't have the means to do it. So I ended up that was the first book that I published that was someone else's complete book. I've done anthologies, I've published several with multiple authors, multiple collaborators, and I'm probably going to do more things like that as we keep going. I'm doing a few print-only projects with some friends, where I'm picking up the print stuff with Stark Publishing, and we're just splitting the royalties.
Yeah, that's great. Now, you call yourself a self-proclaimed book nerd. So did you always know you wanted to be in this industry when you were younger, or did this grow into something else?
You know what? From the time I was a kid, when my mom was reading me little, Walt Disney books, or my mom used to work at the corner store in our small hometown in mid-northern Ontario, and she would bring home comic books every week. They would come in on Tuesdays or Thursdays, one of those two, and she would always bring home comics. And I was an avid reader from the minute I could pick up a book and hold one in my hands. I loved it. I would go to the library in the summer. It would close down for 2 months because it was attached to the public school. And I'd go to the library and I'd check out as many books as I could get all summer. And I was just worried I was going to run out. And when I decided, my parents were very pragmatic and said, "You want to be a writer?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to be a writer." And they would say, "Okay, better have a good job then." And so, because most writers, even today, they need other income to support themselves, traditionally published and maybe less self-published authors than trad pub authors. But they said, get a good job. And when I was in university, I got a part-time job at a bookstore and fell in love with the books. And I got bit by the book bug, as I say. And I've stayed in the book industry ever since. So in 92 was when I started. So I think book nerd really describes many aspects of who I am.
You've held a lot of really great roles in the publishing industry too. And I know you've done some really great things with Kobo. Would you tell us a little bit about what you built there?
So I was hired by Kobo to come up with a solution for self-published authors. I had already done self-publishing. I started in 2004, and this was 2011. Kobo wanted to get into self-publishing. They wanted to make it easier for small publishers, indie authors, to publish to Kobo. They couldn't. They could go direct, but it was painful. It was a really laborious experience that required having a IT background and stuff like that. And so they hired me to come up with a solution to make it easy for self-published authors. Now, I had built a solution like that in one of my previous lives as a bookseller for small publishers for Chapters Indigo, which is like Canada's version of Barnes & Noble. And I built a way for small publishers to get their data into the online bookstore so they could compete with the big players. And so it was like building the same sort of thing, but for ebooks for authors. Yeah, I was hired by Kobo. I came up with Kobo Writing Life, and it was a really fun experience. A great 6 years of my life working with some amazing people. And by the time Kobo Writing Life dashboard was responsible for 1 in every 4 books that sells on Kobo, even to this day. Wow. In the English language. Wow, so it was pretty significant, and it's on par with the world's biggest publishers.
Wow. Isn't that incredible to help create something like that and make such a difference for so many people? I think about all of the information that's out there through that. And I who knows what the ripple effects are from that. So what do you feel, out of all the things that you've done, what do you feel has been 1 or 2 of your greatest successes, and what did you learn from it?
Oh boy, I'm really lucky. I think creating Kobo Writing Life was a huge success story. I think what I learned is that when you work with the right people who have the right integrity, the right passion, the right commitment to excellence, you can do some really amazing things. But that speaks to a lot of my life as a writer as well, because even when you're self-publishing, the most successful authors, the only self about it is maybe self-directed, self-controlled, DIY, because all of the really successful folks that I know are people who are collaborating. They're collaborating with editors, with cover designers, with people from the industry. And so I honestly think that one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from some of my successes is that every single success that I've had is thanks to my willingness to work collaboratively and alongside people, recognizing where I need support and help and recognizing where I can offer support and help. And that it's that classic old peanut butter and chocolate are pretty awesome on their own. You put them together, you get Reese's peanut butter cups and magic happens.
Magic.
And that's the thing I've learned.
Oh, what a great answer. Because that can be applied to every industry and any career. Collaboration, yes, working with the right people can make everything better. What about on the flip side of it? What time that you had a perceived failure, big mistake or challenge? How'd you deal with it and what'd you learn from it?
Yeah, I'm going to probably go to my personal life for that. So I had been married to a wonderful woman and thought it was for life and had all of these plans and dreams. We have an amazing son together. And I was in my mid-40s when the marriage ended, and it was a bit of a surprise. And I think what I learned from that is a twofold thing. I thought it was over. I thought everything was over. I thought that was it. Everything I had spent 20 years of my life building and built together was no longer there. That you can pick up those pieces and you can start over and it can potentially be better. But I also learned that when bad things happen, like the relationship ended, it was not the same relationship we had. Fortunately, it ended in a very amicable way, but it also ended and it was sad. But there don't have to be bad guys. Nobody has to be the bad person in something like that. Bad things can happen. And you don't have to be throwing blame around in order to move on. And I think that was a really important thing because we're still friends and we still get along. Obviously, we're co-raising, not for not very much longer. He's in his teenage years now. So I could look at that as a failure. I could look at the way that this relationship failed. And yes, I did learn some things that I could have done better, that I can become a better person, and some of the things that I could have done to nurture the relationship better or whatever. So I can benefit from the mistakes I made and learning, but I never have to look at it in terms of this was a bad thing, because it was a good thing. It was a great thing. It just is no longer. Therefore, I've moved on. And I think too often in our lives, we cast things as, black and white and good and bad and good or evil, left and right, that kind of thing. And I think there's a lot more in between space. I was going to say gray zone, but there's a lot more space that's in between that's very colorful and dynamic.
True story. Thank you for that. That was an inspiring answer, a really inspiring answer.
Thank you.
So, moving through all of these different positions and experiencing the different life lessons, what do you believe is key to having continued success in life?
Great question. I've thought a lot about this. One of the things that I think has benefited me is that I'm always learning and I'm always growing. And I've never stopped recognizing the value of continually learning and continually growing, learning from other people, learning from myself, learning from experience, learning from books, all of the different ways that you can constantly learn and constantly get better. So for myself as a writer, when I believe that every time I sit down to write, I'm a better writer than I was yesterday. And I'm constantly trying very much to compare myself to myself previously, as opposed to trying to compare myself to writers who are way more successful than me, which is a lot of them. So if I, as a guy who writes scary stories, if I say, here's Mark Leslie and here's Stephen King, guess who's going to lose Mark Leslie's going to lose. Now, I did actually, a fun anecdote for you. I was at a Costco selling one of my True Ghost Story books, Spooky Sudbury, at a Costco, and I was so thrilled that there was a skid of my books, and right beside my skid was a skid of Dr. Sleep by Stephen King. And I took a picture because I was so proud that, look at me, I have a skid of books. He has a skid of books. Now, they set up my table and I was there for 8 hours selling books. At the end of the day, my skid was like down to a quarter of the size, and his had only gone down. It was at 3/4. And so I took a picture and said, I outsold Stephen King. And I used that in a marketing ploy of define yourself as a big fish in a small pool. Now, if we compared my sales overall around the world to Stephen King's that day, no, he sold more books before I even had breakfast. But in that one store, in that one city, for that one afternoon, in print, in that locale, I outsold Stephen King. But you often
celebrate
can't compare
that
to the giants. Yeah. So I will celebrate those moments, and I will compare. Well, obviously, if he was there in person, people wouldn't have even noticed I was there, except for the people who went, I don't want to get in the 6 hour lineup. I want to go talk to this loser over here. but, um, but I think too often we compare our middle or beginning to someone else's end, someone else who's been at it or been doing it for a lot longer and is more successful already. Whether we're looking at social media and we're looking at the way it has 5 billion followers, I only have 5. We need to compare ourselves to ourselves. We need to compare ourselves to the same moments in time so it's actually fair, because we're often really too hard on ourselves, which is why, am I a better writer today than I was? And what have I learned that has made me a better writer? What have I done for practice? What have I done for learning? And I think that's important.
Oh, yeah. So great. I actually have a quote on the bathroom wall that I wanted to have there for my kids to see constantly over and over, that says, comparing yourself to others is a fool's game. The only person to compare yourself to is the person you were the day before. It's an important thing to keep reminding yourself. You have to remind yourself.
Yeah. It's really important.
Yeah. Have you had any regrets that you've learned from, that other people might be able to learn from?
Yeah, so I regret a few things. That I regret is I regret not stopping to take the time to enjoy or celebrate those little victories along the way. Because sometimes what seems like a little victory when it's happening, years later, is a spectacular success. Because in the moment, maybe you were too hard on yourself, or you were expecting more or different. And so I think I wish I could have acknowledged that. One of the things that I've learned from, and I've actually taken this very seriously to task, is making sure that I thank the people along the way who lent me a hand, who helped me, who inspired me. Fortunately, through my podcast, Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing, yes, that's the Stark brand again. It's everywhere. But I have a special episode, which is a thank you, where all I do is I reflect on somebody somewhere in my life who inspired me. And sometimes it's been somebody who is deceased and I never got the chance to tell them. But other times it's, no, they're still alive and I want them to hear this. And I talk about them. I praise them left and center, or whatever it is that they inspired in me. And I think having missed some of those opportunities, I don't want to miss those again. I want people to know what they meant, how they inspired me, how they moved me. And I think that's been an important learning for me.
Oh, yeah. That's wonderful too. I love that you do that on your podcast. That's something that I want to take away from as well. It is very important to let people know exactly how they've impacted you and helped you move forward. And often we aren't giving enough gratitude where it's due. So thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Out of everything that you've learned in life, is there something that you found has brought you the most benefit?
Yeah, I think I've never grown up. I've gotten older. I make noises when I get in and out of chairs and all of the things that come along with it. But I've never grown up. So as children, we're always curious about the world around us. We're always, our eyes are wide open to the possibility and the wonder. Now, that's benefited me as a writer because I still believe in the monster under my bed, and a lot of what I'm inspired to write when it comes to fear and horror and thrillers, and that are those what ifs. What if there is a monster under my bed? What if it's real? What does it want? And exploring those stories. What is in the dark? What is that weird noise that I heard? Could it be this? So that's fueled me as a writer and continues to fuel me, because most of my writing is just speculation and what if this happened, or what if somebody wanted that and got that. That's great for writing. But in terms of myself as a person, that open-mindedness, that willingness, because we start off and there's some instinctual things that we have to do, but humans are different than almost any other species, is we're very tabula rasa when we were born, and we don't know how to walk. We don't know how to talk. We can manipulate things, but we're not really good at it until we get to a certain age, whereas other critters and animals pretty much have to do these things automatically and move on. But we can fill our minds, we can learn, we have a consciousness and a way of learning from other people, whether they're in front of us and mentoring us directly, or they've written it. or it's a song, or whatever art. I always think of art as a thing that inspires and moves us and informs us, but science and math and art and all of those things. So I think what's benefited me in many ways is never growing or believing I'm at a point where I'm going to stop trying to have an open mind and an open heart and open eyes to the possibility of what I can learn and what I can take in, because I'm in my early 50s now, but I'm still learning. So well, obviously I'm learning so much about this technology that these kids are doing, but there's so much that we can continue to learn about things we thought we knew. I love that openness. And so in many ways, never growing up has allowed me to be more mature than I could ever imagine.
Oh, I love it. I'm like, I want to applaud that, all of it. I completely agree, 100%. And I feel the same way internally as well. It's a superpower. Is there any advice that you would give someone in the 40 plus category who might be struggling right now, either to find their right path or find their right next opportunity? Is there anything that you've learned personally that might help?
I've been lucky in that I've always tried to pursue the things I was most passionate about. And a lot of people may think, okay, after you're 40, you can't start again. You know what? I had what I thought was a lifelong relationship end, and I started all over again. And my partner and I are incredibly, I don't regret the previous relationship. We had a great thing, but had I not lost that, I would not have found this. And so there's always something around the corner that you may not be able to see in the moment. So that's an important thing. I think the other thing, I kind of hinged on this a little bit earlier, was pausing to recognize those moments and those landmarks and those milestones that we sometimes don't realize we've achieved, because we always, when we're future looking, we always overestimate what we can get done in like a day or a week or something. And we truly underestimate what we can do in a year or 5 years. So when you look back at what you've done over that time period, all of those little milestones are significant things that you've done. And so you get to a point in your life where you think, no, I can't learn anymore. It's too late or whatever. And I look at all of the success stories of the people whose careers started when they were in their 40s. Because it took a lot of learning, and they built upon the learning and all the things that they did and all the experiences they had that made them better at that. Whether it was actors, writers, musicians, whatever that was, that they found their passion and they didn't go, oh, I spent 30 years doing the wrong thing. No, you probably spent 30 years learning to help you get to where you were. And you can use that as a foundation to stand upon and probably appreciate it better than you would have had you had that success or that career back in your 20s. So, in the 40s is really the new 20s now, isn't it?
I completely agree. 100%. We've talked about your divorce, and I'm sure you've had other challenges in life. But I know, let's be real, a lot of people are going through a divorce right now after this pandemic. I know that the rates have spiked. And so a lot of people are struggling. How did you push through your worst times?
Yeah, so pushing through my worst times was sometimes it's just eating ice cream, drinking beer, listening to Phil Collins records, allowing yourself to accept it and not appreciate, but just be in the moment, because you can't see light without understanding the darkness. And so that was really important. The thing I think that allowed me to push on was reminding myself the sort of a critical thing that I think I picked up on early, and I keep coming back to because I always forget, is that I need to be happy with me, and I need to be happy and content with my authenticity, my integrity, who I am, and what I do, and how I portray that to the world. And my happiness is not dependent upon external factors that I often can't control most of them. To be quite honest, no, I can't. I can't. All of these other factors, COVID, all of these things are going to happen. I have no control over that. I do have control over what I do in the moment. So one of my heroes, Neil Pearce, who's the drummer, lyricist for Rush, and also a writer himself, he always said, I don't understand how anyone could ever be bored with so much out there, so much to learn, so much to know, so much to understand. And I think there are times it's okay to allow ourselves those moments where we may think we're bored because we're not being stimulated by the device that we usually carry around with us, or we're not being stimulated by
Mhm.
that relationship that we've defined ourselves as being a part of. So we sometimes end up creating things that we don't mean to be crutches, but they become crutches for being able to sustain that on our own. What I want to get at is I can't be happy in a job, in a relationship, with a success or failure of a task unless I'm first happy and satisfied with myself and how I'm operating within those situations. So I think a lot of that drive and determination, at least for me, has often come from my stance or perspective on the situation.
So wise. That being applied can change your life right there when you just take that perspective.
Yeah.
What about habits? Are there any habits you've developed over the years that you feel contribute to your overall success?
I have a lot of bad habits. The ones that have
Tell us about
benefited
that.
me,
We all have
the
bad
habits that have
habits.
benefited me are making sure that I prioritize the things that are most important to me, the
Mhm.
people and things. And for example, I've always wanted to be a writer. I've wanted to be a storyteller my entire life. And it's a sort of an individual task you do in privacy typically. And so, in order for me to have those moments, I would have to get up early while the rest of the house was sleeping. Now, maybe I come by this naturally because my dad was a fisherman and he was up like some ungodly hour. And I remember when I was a kid seeing him standing over the kitchen sink, leaning over the sink and looking out the kitchen window, which is like down the main street of our town. And he didn't know I was there. And he just had the whole world was his. Everyone else in the house was sleeping. And he was in command of that world. And I now get up at 5:30 every morning and put on the coffee, and the first thing I do is I write every day. And it feels like I have the world. It's just me in the world. I know there's a lot of people awake somewhere else, but within my own little part of the world, everyone else in the
But
house
you're
is
owning it
asleep.
right then.
Um, so I think there's something in those moments, that the habit of seizing the day early in the day, so that no matter what happens for the rest of the day, I got done the thing that was most precious to me, is cool. I'm going to be going on my son and I go on a road trip and have gone on a special boys road trip, just the two of us, ever since he was
Love
about
it.
7 years old. And he still likes doing it. And he's going to turn 17 this year. We do it the week of his birthday. And he still
That's awesome.
wants to do it when he's 17. It's not painful. It's not a bad experience for him.
That's
But those moments where he's sleeping either in a hotel room or in a tent or whatever, and I'm up early anyways, and I don't disturb him. I let him, because he's a teenager. They do like
yeah.
to sleep in. But I'm happy in the moment, knowing I'm spending time with him. But then I also have my quiet time, whether I'm reading or writing or whatever
Mhm.
it is. And those are some really cherished moments for me. So the habit of prioritizing those things that are important to you, obviously for me as a writer, the habit of trying to write if I can every day has actually
Yeah.
benefited me. It's just made me a better writer,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
made
Yes.
sure I can keep moving on different projects.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes complete sense. Doing the most important things first, getting them done. And really, that does open up your day for so much. I know, I try to have a super healthy breakfast shake. So I get all my veggies in the morning. I feel a little guilt free for the rest of the day. It's the same theory. But absolutely putting the people that you love first and foremost, that's how you avoid serious, debilitating regret later on in life, if you ask me. So, from personal experience.
Yeah. I love your idea of the get all your veggies in as early as you can before the desserts start to tempt you.
So I'm curious now, since you're a book lover, has there been a book that has had the biggest impact on your life that you think everyone else should read?
Oh, wow. It's a tough one. I think I recently reread And I did this for a podcast called The Best Book Ever, where the host asks you to talk about the best book ever.
Yeah.
And I've always had
Perfect.
trouble with this because there's so many, but
I
George R. Stewart's Earth Abides. And I reread it during the pandemic. I actually reread it with my partner, Liz. We actually took turns reading it aloud to one another, which I had never done for a full-length novel ever. I've read books to my son and even like novels to my son, but we took turn chapter by chapter reading, and we each had a copy of the book, so we were reading aloud while the other person was following the words, and it was a great experience. But I first discovered that book when I was 12, 13. I picked it out of the library. It was a harder read because I was younger, but I loved the concept of suddenly the world ended and they were trying to rebuild civilization. And it was a pandemic of all things. And so this book has come back to me so many times. I remember being inspired, and I wrote song lyrics. I wrote poetry and short fiction inspired by that book. I've then reread it later on in life a couple times. Liz and I reread it last year. We even incorporated reading that book into a pandemic parody video we did called Stuck in This House Here With You that we did last year as a joke, Stuck in the Middle with You by Steeler's Wheel. And in it, we're reading the book. We're both reading a book about the pandemic during a pandemic. We're both stuck in the house. The idea that we've got nothing but just time. And then we did it in another video. We did another parody pandemic video. And again, I'm reading the book in it. So this book has come back in so many different ways, in so many different creative formats that and there are elements from the story. There's elements from the novel that when I was rereading it just last year, I went, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was riffing off that when I wrote this short story or this character in a novel. I forgot that I had originally encountered that motif that George R. Stewart made me think about when I was a teenager, and I wrote about it in my 30s. Because you forget, you were impacted by the world around us, by the people, places, and things. Mm-hmm. We sometimes forget. And so it was really great to go back to that book just recently, like in the last year, reread it and go, oh, yeah, that's where I remember that from.
That's great. I've not read this book, so I'm excited. I'm adding it to my list for the summer. So now with your Stark Publishing, are you taking on, if anyone is listening and they're wanting to write a book, are you taking on new clients, or is this something that is for friends?
Not if a writer is looking for a publisher to publish their books, don't look at me. I usually work on projects based on serendipity. If they are looking for advice about the business of writing and publishing, if you go to markleslie.ca, I offer a free 20-minute consultation because I can usually talk to you about some ideas and how you may be able to do it yourself or how to hire someone to do something for you. Do you want to pitch it to a publisher? How would you do that? Those kinds of things. It's $100 an hour consultation after that, but I usually like to believe, and a lot of clients are really satisfied. After 20 minutes, they get all they need. It's free. And hopefully they moved on and they've learned something really cool that they can take with them. Because I like the idea of maybe if I just answer a few quick questions, they got what they need. So yeah, I take on clients who want to learn about the business of writing and publishing, but not necessarily as a publisher, more as an industry insider.
Got it. And all your books are available for purchase. I'll make sure and have links to your books, which, as you mentioned, you write a lot of thriller and whatnot, but you also have fiction mixed in with the thriller, yes?
Yeah. So fiction. So my only series right now is the Canadian Werewolf in New York series, or my Canadian Werewolf series that starts off with that book. And that is more of urban fantasy / humor / contemporary, maybe a little bit of thriller mixed in there. But yeah, all of my books, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, true ghost stories, books about writing and publishing to help other writers. They're all available pretty much on every major platform: Amazon, Apple, Google, Kobo, Nook, Barnes & Noble. You can order through local bookstores, and ebooks and print books available through pretty much any library system if you wanted to try and get them for free.
Fantastic. I'm curious, out of all of your books, because you've written a lot of them, is there one that's near and dear to your...
Well, that's a great question. I would want to say my first one, the one where I created Stark Publishing, One Hand Screaming, because I actually proved that I could do it, is near and dear to my heart. But to be quite honest, I keep coming back to it. It was a standalone thriller called Evasion that is a short novel, but it's a thriller. It takes place in about 4 hours. And I wrote it shortly after my dad died. I kept seeing him everywhere, or thinking I was seeing him everywhere.
Wow.
And I imagined,
Mhm.
what if he was really alive? And why would he have to hide the fact from his family that he was actually still alive? And so Evasion was a story that takes place, I call it like Die Hard in an office building in Toronto, where this guy gets called into his boss's office. His boss pulls out a gun and tries to kill him. And from that point on, everyone he meets is trying to kill him. And he thinks it has something to do with the fact that he's been investigating the fact that he thinks his dad's really alive. And so that's near and dear to my heart, because I got to get some emotions out about my father's own death and the speculation that came out of it, like that what if. But so many readers over the years have reached out to me and said, that happened to me too when he died. I kept thinking I would see them in a crowd. And so what I realized I had done is I was tapping into my own something in myself that was really personal and challenging, and realized that it was so common that so many other people had that same experience.
Yeah.
And then I made a fun thriller out of it. So a wish fulfillment fantasy. They're still alive.
I had the same experience after my dad died too. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. Now, before we go, I love this. This has been so great, Mark. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about, or anything that you want to share with the audience about what you're doing?
I just want to share, think about what you're doing as the audience. Think about all the cool ideas that you had, the things that inspire you. What inspires you to get up in the morning? When you get up in the morning and go, I get to do this. Think about that if you can.
Yes.
Reflect on that. And that's something that I'm hoping can give you some energy, give you some power, and so give you some strength to push through and to discover that true you that you can love.
Oh, that's so perfect. All right, Mark, before we leave, this is my favorite question. What are you sure of in life?
Yeah. I am sure of the uncertainty. I can guarantee you that I am going to be surprised, and I'm not going to know. And that is part of the thrill of life. That is part of the spectacular wonder. And I look forward to the things I don't know yet or don't understand or that are going to take me by surprise, because those are sometimes some of the most amazing opportunities.
Yes, they are. Thank you so much. This was such an inspiring talk, Mark. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you. It was awesome to talk.
There were so many great lessons from Mark's story. I loved that this self-proclaimed book nerd, someone who had always loved reading and had a passion for the written word, found himself a lifelong place in the industry that has brought him so much joy. What a gift in life. If you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. What do your days feel like? Do they feel like work, or are you doing work that is exciting and fulfills? When Mark wanted to self-publish during the days when self-publishing had a stigma attached, Mark wisely created Stark Publishing to release his books the way he wanted, while giving society what they wanted: the perception of a publishing house. Brilliant. Once again, successful people find ways to make things work for them. They do not wait for permission. They do not wait to be told what to do. They do not wait for people to show them the right path. They forge their own way. They create their own path. And by doing so, they then give permission to others to do the same. Through Mark's own experience in self-publishing, he developed a skill set that positioned him perfectly to help Kobo develop a solution for other self-published authors. He created a program that allows independent authors to compete in the same arena as authors with big publishing houses. He took all he had learned and experienced and figured out how to best share that with others in this Kobo self-publishing platform. What a gift to all of us. How much information is out there in the world because of this program that Mark helped create? The ripple effects of what Mark helped bring into the world will never be able to be measured. They're infinite. Our impact on this world is profound. We truly have no idea what kind of influence we have on those around us. What kind of ripples are you making? Spend time thinking about what you are putting out into the world, and then spend time thinking about what you want to put out into the world. Make sure these two things are aligned, and if they are not, you can make the decision to create the right changes. You get to choose the kind of impact you want to make with your one life. I loved what Mark shared about collaboration. He said, when you work with the right people who have the right integrity, passion, and commitment to excellence, you can do incredible things together. The most successful people and organizations are collaborating. They are bringing talent together to produce something even better than they could do alone. Recognizing where they need help and support and recognizing where they can lend help and support is a characteristic of the truly successful. As Mark put it, chocolate and peanut butter are each delicious on their own, but put them together and you create something magical. When you are working with the right people, everything feels different. As a recruiter, I can attest that this is one of the biggest reasons someone will choose to stay or leave a role. After over 20 years of executive recruiting, I can tell you without a doubt that money will not be the X factor that makes you happy. It is all about the people and the project. Have you found the right people to collaborate with? Are you working with people who lift you up? People who share your integrity, your passion, your commitment to excellence? If you're not, I ask you, what would it feel like if you were surrounded by such people? What do you think could be accomplished? What would your days feel like? If you aren't working with the right people, I would suggest it's time to find the team that you can make some magic with. I found what Mark shared about his experience with divorce to be incredibly insightful. First, he shared that when it happened, he thought life was over. Everything he had built for 20 years was being torn away, and the future as he had seen it had been erased. This is an absolute crushing experience. In the mix of darkness, it can be so hard to see the light. But what Mark learned is that even after the age of 40, you can pick up the pieces and start over. What was may be over, but what will be can be even better than dreamed, as Mark himself has experienced. Mark also learned that sometimes bad things happen and it is sad, but that does not mean there has to be a bad guy. Sometimes you go through hard things in life and you do not have to throw blame around to move on. This is highly evolved thinking that once understood can bring a huge amount of peace to life. We are all doing the very best we can at any given moment, reacting the best way possible with the information and experience we have at that time. Releasing the need to place blame on others is the only way to release the shackles you create in your own life. Who is the bad guy in your story? Can you reframe the picture? Can you find what you've learned from the situation? How has this person helped you become a better person? What are all the things that you've learned from the situation? how can you apply what you learn from this contemplation to making your own life better? As Mark shared, we often cast things as good or bad, black or white, but there is so much more space that is colorful and dynamic in between. It is our job to look and find that color. There is always something there that you may not be able to see in the moment. One of Mark's key to success is his continuous learning and growing. He loves learning from all of the various ways out there, and every day he tries to better himself, using only who he was the day before for comparison. This was an important note from Mark, as he shared if he compared himself to Stephen King, he would find himself wanting and would end up feeling bad about what he's doing. The successful know that comparing yourself to others is a fool's game, and it will steal your joy. The only person to compare yourself to is who you were the day before. Mark Leslie trying to be like Stephen King is going to make Mark Leslie absolutely miserable. But Mark Leslie trying to be the very best Mark Leslie and every day working on making himself a better Mark Leslie will lead to a successful, fulfilled life that we are all looking to create. I loved Mark's story about outselling Stephen King in that one day, in that one store. Staying focused on the positive and celebrating the little wins along the way is a key marker of successful people. As Mark shared, too often we compare our beginning or our middle to someone else's end. We are way too hard on ourselves. The only question to be asking yourself is, what have I done for practice today? What have I done for learning today? What can I do today that will help me be better at X tomorrow? And then celebrate every little win that comes your way. As Mark shared, we tend to overestimate what can be done in 6 months to a year, but we underestimate what can be done in 3 to 5 years. If we aren't paying attention to those little milestones and recognizing them for the significant things they are, we can miss so much and have a warped perspective. For example, 2016 was a really tough year for me, and I kept saying it was a horrible, no good, terrible year. However, I keep an already accomplished bucket list going, of which I record the things that I've already accomplished year by year. Anything that I have had the honor of experiencing that someone else may not have the opportunity to do will make this list. When I reviewed the things that I did during 2016, during that horrible, no good, terrible year, it was completely humbling. I had amazing experiences in 2016. I went to Chicago. I saw Bruce Springsteen. I experienced the amazing Safari West in California. I went to the Virgin Islands. I was on TV on Let's Make a Deal, and I won grand prize in a sand sculpture contest. And it was also the last full year that I spent with my father before he passed away. We ended that year with a trip to Disneyland with my entire family, my dad, brothers, aunts, cousins, kids. It was a truly magical experience and one that still brings me comfort and joy to this day. Life is a gift. Every day is a gift. It is so easy to get caught up in our day-to-day life, to get into that Groundhog Day mode with our heads down, just doing our best to exist. But taking time to make a literal list of your blessings year by year infuses your life with growth and gratitude. And it is the easiest thing to do. How many things have you done in the past few months that you've taken for granted, not seeing it for the beauty of what it is? A new experience, a new lesson, a gift, something that adds to the color and depth of your life. Start your list tonight and keep a running tally of your successes, your accomplishments, and your experiences year by year. You will find it adds a richness of perspective, allowing you to see how truly special your life is. Mark had so many other great points in our conversation. Another key to Mark's success is that he's never grown up. He may get older in terms of years, but he keeps his eyes open to possibility and wonder. He remains curious with the world. That willingness to keep an open mind, an open heart, and open eyes keeps the world of possibility open to him, leaving him more aware of what he can learn and take in. I love how Mark put this. Never growing up has allowed him to be more mature than he could ever imagine. It also allows him to see that it's never too late to go after what you want in life. As Mark said, there are countless people who started a new career going after their passion in their 40s, 50s, 60s. They used all they learned and all of their life experiences to make them even better at their new profession, not to mention much more appreciative of every aspect. If you are unhappy in the work you are doing, you can make a change too. Open your mind, open your heart, and open your eyes. There is opportunity all around you. Do not let age or stage of life stop you from doing what you really want to be doing. There is only one day in life when it is truly too late. I loved what Mark shared when dealing with times of struggle. He was honest and said that you need to give yourself the space for the sad music and the ice cream. You have to be in the moment. You have to sit in the darkness and find understanding and acceptance. The only way out is through. Or as Mark said, you cannot see the light without understanding the darkness. Which leads to his practice of gratitude, giving thanks to all those who have helped him along the way. We can all learn from this. Who has helped you in your life? Who are you grateful for crossing your path? Have you let them know what an impact they have had on your life? Take the opportunity to do that today. I promise you, you will never regret telling someone thank you, but you will regret not taking the opportunity to do so once the chance is taken away forever. Make this a practice. Every time you think of something that someone did for you, if you have not already, call them and thank them. You never know how much they might need to hear that in that moment. I think Mark's habit is one of my favorite to date. He makes a habit to prioritize the things that are important to him. This is crucial. Too many of us prioritize the needs of work and everybody else over our own needs. Oftentimes, so much so that we forget what our own needs are. This causes an internal depletion, which leads to an edgy, angry, short-fused energy. You must fill your own bucket before you can effectively fill others. If you find yourself snappy, on edge, quick to anger, I ask you, what have you been doing for yourself? Have you been making yourself and your needs a priority? If not, it is time to pick up this ever important habit and carve out time for yourself, either early day, midday, or end of day, but make it your own. Again, this must be for whatever is most important to you, not to your significant other, not to your children or your parents or your siblings or your friends. What is most important to you? Think about the things that inspire you, that make you excited to get up in the morning. What is that thing that makes you say, I get to do this? Be sure you make yourself, your joy, your passion, and your life a priority. You will find yourself infused with energy, power, and strength, allowing you to give so much more to others. Finally, I want to leave you with what I felt was one of the most important life lessons of all. As Mark shared, he said, I need to be happy with me. And I need to be happy and content with my own authenticity and my own integrity. Who I am and what I do and how I portray that to the world, my happiness is not dependent upon external factors. This is the absolute truth. You can have all the riches in the world, but if you are not happy and content with yourself, with your own authenticity and integrity, then you are not experiencing the sweet, sweet taste of success. And oh, it tastes so good. The truth is, most things in this world are outside of our control, and the truly successful, they focus on what they can control. And what you can control is what you do in any given moment. As Mark said, he cannot feel happy in a job, in a relationship, with the success of a task, unless he is first happy and satisfied with himself and how he has operated within those situations. This is a true story. I do not care what you portray to the world outside of you. You cannot fool yourself. Are you happy with your own authenticity and integrity? Are you proud of how you are showing up in the world? I hope so. And if you aren't, here's the great news. You have the power to change your situation. You have the power to make a different choice. What choice will you make? What choice will make you feel happy with yourself? What decisions align with your own integrity? This is my wish for us all, that you live your authentic life in a way that makes you feel internally proud, satisfied, and happy. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Subscribe and follow us on all streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Player FM. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Blood Podcast. If you liked today's episode, please consider giving us a like and sharing with a friend. I hope you make today a most fulfilling day.